Here's a question we get frequently. How much should I spend for marketing? And the typical way this question comes in is someone will say, hey, I read a report that said I should reserve 5% of my gross revenue for marketing. Is that right? And my response is always the same. It might be. We need to do the research. Well, what does doing the research mean? See, a lot of people will tell you that you should allocate a percentage of your revenue. It might be 5, it might be 7, it might be 10, depends upon the type of business you're in. And you should allocate that percentage and then spend that every month on marketing. Other people will say you should spend the absolute maximum you can. If you spend $100 and it generates $130 in business, that's a good marketing spend. Well, that's not realistic. That doesn't consider the cost of doing business, your overhead, taxes. That strategy makes no sense at all. So how do we determine what our marketing spend would be? It's mathematics. Sorry, I hated math in high school. A lot of you probably did too. We have to do some math. The first thing you need to understand is what's the average transaction value for your company. Now, this is simple arithmetic. Let's say you did $1,000 in business and you had 10 customers. Well, your average transaction value was $100. Pretty simple. But actually, it's not that simple because most of us have a variety of products and services that we sell at different price points. So you might have a group of products that you sell in that 100 to 250 range, and another group maybe goes from 500 to 700, and then you have a few products that you sell for more than $1,000. Well, if you have a $1,000 product and a $100 product, does that mean that your average transaction value is $550? Again, that's not very realistic. So what I suggest you do is analyze your product or service mix and the various price points, those tiers. Most companies will have 2 or 3 different tiers, maybe 4. It's rare that you need more than that. And then you want to break each of those tiers down and analyze how many transactions you do in that tier, and therefore what is the average value of a transaction in each of those tiers. So in the example I just gave, you might have an average value of $175 for the lower tier, $600 for the middle tier, and $1,150 for the upper tier. But you want to know those numbers. And before you can design a marketing campaign, you have to know what a transaction is worth to you. But you also need to know the lifetime value of your customer. Most of us do business with a customer more than one time. So how frequently do we do business with them? And over what period of time do they stay our customer? Simple example, let's say your transaction value is $100, but your customer buys from you once a month, and you typically keep a customer for 2.5 years. So the lifetime value of that customer is 2.5 years times 12 months. Well, that's 30 months times $100. That's $3,000. So the typical customer that you work with is worth $3,000 to you. So the ad spend question is, how much are you willing to spend to earn a $3,000 customer? Many times, the ad spend to acquire that customer is going to be greater than the average transaction value. I know that seems counterintuitive. Why would I spend more than $100 to get a $100 sale? Well, you're not looking at it as a $100 sale. You're thinking about it as a $3,000 customer. Now, I realize not every customer is going to stay with you for 30 months. Some might come in at one time. Some might only stay with you for 3 or 4 or 5 months, but others might stay with you for 5 years. We're talking averages here. So if the average lifetime value of your customer is $3,000 in my example, how much are you willing to spend to acquire that customer? Let me give you a rule. It's not in your workbook, but you should write it down. And then I want to share an example. The rule is the company that can spend the most to acquire a new customer will win the market share battle every time. The company that can spend the most to acquire that new customer will win the market share battle every time. Now, here's an objection that we frequently hear. Well, Gordon, we're a one and done business. We do business with a customer one time and they don't need us again. I hear this a lot from our clients in the building trades, roofers, remodeling contractors, that type of business. You know, a roofer will say, well, we put a new roof on, that customer doesn't need another roof for probably at least 15 years. And by then, the same homeowner may not own the home, or even if they do, they may not remember us. So we're a one and done kind of company. Well, that's not always the case. We worked with a roofing contractor outside of Seattle. Really excellent company. Their average transaction value was $16,000, which is high when you look at the normal roofing transaction across the country. And they consistently hit that number month in and month out. And the owner was telling me how, look, we're a one and done. There's no way that we can increase that. I said, well, let's spend the next year and try something. So we did a couple of things. First, we designed a really nice yard sign. So every time a job was started, we had a sign in the yard. Again, this is nothing new. Many, many roofing contractors do that, as do other contractors. But then we designed a really nice flyer. It was actually a three-sided, three-panel brochure. And the salesperson that had sold that job, the day the job started, walked a 2x2 grid around the property where they were doing the new roof and dropped off that brochure if the homeowner wasn't home, or introduced himself and handed the brochure if the homeowner was home. Again, this is nothing new. Realtors do this all the time when they get a new listing, but it's not normal in the roofing industry. At the end of the job, the salesperson walked the neighborhood again with a different flyer. One of the reasons we do that is because frequently when a homeowner needs a new roof, other homes in the neighborhood also need a roof. There's been a windstorm, there's been hail, there's been some environmental thing that happens that people at least want to have their roof looked at. The other thing that we did is for 18 months after the roof was finished, we followed up with that homeowner with a greeting card, a physical greeting card that was mailed through the mail, not an e-card, nothing digital. It was actually a physical greeting card that they received in the mail. And we did those greeting cards in 4-month cycles. So for 3 of the 4 months, we had helpful hints for homeowners. Now, there may have been a message on it that says, hey, we like referrals, but it was just purely giving the homeowner some information that was helpful, branded for our client, and reaching out to them every month after the sale. The 4th month in each sequence was a definite request for referrals. And it was a little bit of a training focus. How can you ask your friends or refer your friends to our company? Then we'd start the 4-month cycle over with different cards, different messages, of course. We did that for a year. So interesting result from this campaign. We analyzed all of the new business that had come in as a result of those referral campaigns or the signs in the neighborhood and attributed that to the initial job. And what we found is the average transaction value for that contractor had gone from $16,000 to just over $18,000. It had increased by over $2,000 just by virtue of a very simple marketing campaign that took their name out to more people as a result of jobs in the neighborhood and really followed up with their clients, which again, most contractors don't do a very good job of. So, how much should you spend for marketing? The answer to that question is the result of this analysis. What is your average transaction value? How long do you keep a customer? And how much are you willing to spend to acquire that new customer?